Before we begin, subscribe, like, comment which story disturbed you most, and share this with someone brave enough to listen. Tonight, we're diving into 3 deeply unsettling true stories from people who thought they were booking a simple vacation rental, only to discover that some horrors don't end when you check out. These accounts come from real people who experience things that will make you think twice before your next Airbnb stay. So, turn off the lights, get comfortable, and whatever you do, don't forget to lock your doors. Because tonight, we're exploring 3 disturbing true Airbnb horror stories. Story 1. The Basement Tornado. First story comes from a woman named Sarah, a 29-year-old graphic designer from Portland, who was traveling to Nashville for a work conference in October 2019. Sarah had used Airbnb dozens of times before without incident. She considered herself a savvy traveler, always reading reviews carefully and trusting her instincts. The listing she found seemed perfect. A charming 2-story cottage on the outskirts of Nashville, surrounded by trees, with glowing 5-star reviews. The host, a woman named Margaret, had been renting the property for 3 years. The price was reasonable, and the location was ideal, just 20 minutes from the convention center. Sarah arrived on a Thursday evening, just as the sun was setting. The cottage was even more picturesque in person, with a wraparound porch and flower boxes beneath the windows. Margaret greeted her warmly, a woman in her 60s, with kind eyes and a gentle southern accent. She showed Sarah around, pointing out the kitchen, the bedroom upstairs, and the cozy living room with its stone fireplace. "You'll have the whole place to yourself," Margaret assured her. "I live about 10 minutes away, so just call if you need anything at all." Everything seemed perfect. Sarah unpacked, ordered takeout, and spent the evening preparing for her presentation. Around 11 p.m., she headed upstairs to bed, exhausted from the long flight. That's when she heard it. A sound from somewhere below her. Not from the main floor, but deeper. From beneath the floorboards. It was rhythmic, deliberate. The unmistakable sound of footsteps. Sarah froze in bed. She held her breath and listened. The footsteps continued, slow and measured, moving from one end of the house to the other. Then they stopped. She tried to rationalize it. Old houses make noises, but these weren't creaks. These were footsteps. Sarah pulled up the listing again. There was no mention of a basement. The photos showed only the main floor and upstairs bedroom. The footsteps started again, this time faster. Back and forth, like someone pacing. Her hands trembling, Sarah texted Margaret. "Hi, I'm hearing noises from below the house. Is there a basement I should know about?" The response came quickly. "Oh, don't worry, sweetie. That's just the house settling. These old places are noisy at night. Sleep well." But Sarah couldn't sleep. The footsteps continued sporadically throughout the night. Around 3 a.m., she heard what sounded like something being dragged across a floor. The next morning, exhausted and unnerved, Sarah went downstairs to investigate. She searched the main floor carefully, looking for any door or access point. In the kitchen, she noticed something. A small area rug near the pantry that seemed oddly placed. Sarah moved the rug aside and discovered a recessed handle, a trapdoor. Her heart pounding, Sarah pulled the handle. The door lifted easily, revealing wooden stairs descending into darkness. A wave of stale, musty air washed over her. She turned on her phone's flashlight and descended 3 steps, just far enough to see into the space below. The basement was larger than she expected, but it wasn't empty. In the beam of her flashlight, she could make out a living space. A mattress on the floor with rumpled blankets. A small table with a lamp. Boxes stacked against the walls. A mini refrigerator humming in the corner. And there, hanging from a clothesline, were items of clothing. Women's clothing. As her light swept across the space, she noticed photographs. Dozens of them pinned to a corkboard. Photos of the cottage. Photos of different women. Young women standing on the porch, smiling. Vacation photos. Airbnb guests. Sarah's blood turned to ice when she saw the most recent addition. It was a photo of her arriving the night before, rolling her suitcase up the path. She hadn't posed for that photo. Someone had taken it without her knowledge. Sarah scrambled back up the stairs. heart hammering. She slammed the trapdoor shut and ran to grab her things. As she was packing, she heard it again. The footsteps.
Officer, is
But
there a
this
problem?
time,
Just
they
a
were
routine
different,
check. Everything's fine.
faster,
Okay, it startled
urgent.
me.
moving toward the trat. Sarah didn't wait. She grabbed her suitcase and ran. She burst out the front door and didn't stop until she reached her car. She sped away and called the police from a gas station 2 miles down the road. When officers arrived at the cottage an hour later, they found the trapdoor exactly where Sarah described it. But the basement was empty. The mattress, the clothing, the photographs, everything had been removed. All that remained was dust and empty space. Margaret seemed genuinely shocked and claimed, she had no knowledge of anyone living in the basement. With no evidence and no suspect, the case went nowhere. Margaret's Airbnb listing was taken down, but no charges were filed. Sarah never found out who had been living beneath her that night or what they had planned. She never learned if those other women in the photographs had made it out safely. But sometimes, late at night, Sarah still wonders about them. And she wonders what would have happened if she hadn't jumped from that window. Story 2. The host who watched Tower's second story takes us to rural Vermont in the winter of 2021. A software engineer named Marcus, 34, decided to escape his cramped Boston apartment for a month-long Airbnb stay in the countryside during the pandemic. He wanted peace, quiet, and space to work remotely. The property he found was a converted barn on a large estate, advertised as completely private with high-speed internet. The host, Robert, lived in the main house about 100 yards away, but promised complete privacy. Marcus arrived on a gray February afternoon. Robert met him at the barn, a tall man in his 50s with an intense gaze. He gave Marcus a tour, showed him how everything worked, then handed over the keys. "I'm usually in my workshop during the day," Robert explained. "But if you need anything, just text me. I won't bother you otherwise." Marcus appreciated the respect for his privacy. The barn was perfect rustic but modern, with exposed beams and large windows overlooking snowy forest. For the first week, everything was ideal. Then Marcus started noticing small things. Objects moved slightly from where he'd left them. His laptop would be facing a different direction. A book moved from the sofa to the coffee table. His toothbrush on the wrong side of the sink. At first he thought he was being forgetful. But the incidents became more frequent. One morning, Marcus came downstairs to find his coat laid out on the sofa as if someone had been examining it. The pockets were turned inside out. He texted Robert, "Hey, did you need to come into the barn for any reason?" Robert's response was quick, "No, haven't been by at all." "Everything working all right?" Marcus said everything was fine, but a seed of unease had been planted. That night, he decided to test his suspicions. Before bed, he carefully arranged several items in specific ways. A pen perpendicular to his notebook. His mug with the handle pointing north. His bedroom door open at a precise angle. The next morning, everything had been moved. Someone had been inside while he slept. Marcus searched the barn thoroughly, but found nothing. That evening, he wedged a chair under the door handle before bed. The chair was still in place the next morning. Nothing had been moved. But when Marcus went to shower, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. On the steamed-up bathroom mirror, someone had drawn a smiley face. The condensation was fresh. Someone was inside the barn with him. Marcus grabbed his phone and ran outside, calling 911 from his car. The police arrived and searched thoroughly. They found no one, but they did find something. Behind a false panel in the basement, they discovered a narrow crawl space that ran the length of the barn. Inside were blankets, a flashlight, snacks, and several notebooks filled with detailed observations. The notebooks documented Marcus's routine with disturbing precision. What time he woke up, what he ate, how long he worked, when he took breaks. The entries went back to the day he'd arrived. The most recent entry read, "He's becoming suspicious. Need to be more careful." The police confronted Robert, who denied knowledge of the crawl space. They discovered Robert had a son, Daniel, who had been living in the main house basement. Daniel had a history of mental health issues. When police went to question him, He had vanished. Daniel was never found. Marcus left that same day. The Airbnb listing was permanently removed, but when Marcus got home and unpacked, he found something that hadn't been there before. A Polaroid photograph of him sleeping in the loft bedroom, taken from the foot of the bed. On the back, in that same handwriting, was a message. "Thank you for visiting. Come back soon." Marcus has never used Airbnb again, and he checks every room he stays in now, searching for crawl spaces and hidden panels, looking for signs that someone might be watching. Story 3. The cottage by the lake. Our final story is perhaps the most disturbing, because unlike the previous two, it ended in tragedy. In summer 2020, 3 friends, Emma, Josh, and Tyler, all in their late 20s, decided to rent an Airbnb for a week to escape pandemic isolation. They found a remote cottage on a lake in northern Minnesota, miles from the nearest town. The price was remarkably low, and the host, David, had only a few reviews. But they were positive. They arrived on a Saturday afternoon. The cottage was small but charming, with a dock extending into the water. David met them, their quiet man in his 40s, who seemed nervous. He mentioned he'd be staying in a trailer on the property doing maintenance work. "You won't even know I'm here," he assured them. The first 2 days were perfect. They swam, fished, and sat around the fire at night. David kept his distance. On the third morning, Emma went for a solo walk along the shoreline. About half a mile from the cottage, she noticed something through the trees. A shed, old and weathered, with windows boarded up from the outside. The boards were nailed in place with dozens of nails, and on one board, barely visible, someone had scratched words. "Help us." Emma's heart raced. She tried to look through gaps in the boards, but it was too dark. She took photos and hurried back to the cottage. When she told Josh and Tyler, they decided to investigate before calling police. They walked back to the shed together. In daylight, it looked even more sinister. Then they heard something. A voice, weak and muffled from inside. "Help, please." Someone was inside. Someone was alive. Tyler ran back for tools while Emma and Josh stayed, calling out reassurances. Tyler returned with a crowbar and hammer. They broke the padlock and pulled open the door. The smell was overwhelming. Inside, huddled in the corner, was a woman. She was emaciated, filthy, barely conscious. "Please help me," she whispered. Tyler ran to get help while Emma and Josh stayed with her, giving her water. She mumbled incoherently about darkness and someone named David. Their host, Josh, showed her the Airbnb listing photo. "Is this him?" Her eyes focused, and she began to sob. "Yes. He locked me here. Please don't let him find me." They helped her to her feet, supporting her as they moved back toward the cottage. She was so weak she could barely walk. Halfway back, they saw him. David was standing on the cottage porch watching them. His expression had changed, cold and calculated. He started walking toward them, then running. Josh told Emma to take the woman to the car. He stayed behind to hold David off. Emma heard shouting, sounds of struggle, but she didn't look back. She had to get the woman to safety. She reached the car just as Tyler pulled up with a police cruiser behind him. The officer called for backup, as Emma explained what they'd found. Police found Josh on the beach, alive but injured with a gash on his head. David had fled into the woods. The woman was rushed to the hospital. Her name was Rachel. She had been missing for 7 months after renting the same cottage. David had drugged her coffee and locked her in the shed. Police found evidence of at least 2 other missing women who had rented the cottage. Their belongings were discovered on the property, but the women were never found. David was apprehended 3 days later at the Canadian border. He's now serving life in prison. Rachel recovered physically, but the scars remain. Emma, Josh, and Tyler still struggle with PTSD, knowing they almost didn't investigate that shed, and they think about the other women who scratched desperate messages that no one saw in time. CON3 stories. 3 disturbing encounters that remind us that when we book through apps and websites, we're placing enormous trust in strangers. We're sleeping in their spaces, vulnerable in ways we rarely consider, Before your next booking, read reviews carefully. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, leave. A 5-star rating doesn't guarantee safety. Just means the person before you survived to leave a review. Thank you for listening to these 3 disturbing true Airbnb horror stories. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant, and always check the basement.